Sometimes, the things that scare us most aren't works of fiction. More often than you would like to think, they're the things that we've lived through. I'll share with you, whether you choose to believe me or not, one of those tales. It was summer the first time it had happened. I was home alone that night. I was watching a favorite show of mine when the noise had started. It was so soft and subtle at first that I hadn't really noticed it. It wasn't until the commercial break that I had heard that soft tapping more fully. I still remember the way it sounded. It seemed to echo off the walls in that dark room before finding me again. I naturally had thought I had just scared myself into hearing it. After all, it was a scary show I was watching in the first place. I still felt terribly uneasy, but I shoved that feeling aside when the show had started again. I didn't notice the noise again for the rest of the airing. Hell, by the end of the program, I was content again and comfortable, and I could feel sleep starting to seep into me. It was late. I could tell just by the inky blackness that was cradling me. I gave the TV one last smile before shutting it off. My bed was impossibly comfortable that night. It was perfectly warm as the blanket gave the weight of safety. I could feel my body growing more and more relaxed as I settled in. My eyes felt heavy as they adjusted to the darkness around me, and I closed them. I let myself start to drift off into sleep. I remember for a brief moment not really understanding what I had just heard. It was such a soft, familiar noise. Slowly, though, it dawned upon my foggy brain that the noise was the same as it had been before. My eyes snapped open more out of surprised fear than anything else. I felt my heart leap into my chest, and for a long moment that was all I could hear. Each loud, fearful drum of it rang in my ears. My body stiffened reflexively as my eyes scanned the room. It was a half moon out, but it didn't really leave much light to help me see. Instead, it worked to cast odd shadows across the room. The small trinkets on my desk made impossibly large foes as I watched the darkness. It felt so heavy now. That once comfortable weight that had kept me before was gone. This time I knew it couldn't have been my imagination. I could hear it more clearly in the wall above my head. My eyes shot up to gaze at that blank space. I felt sick as I tried to calm myself, each nerve so frayed from fear that I couldn't even manage to move more than I had. What in the hell was that noise? It sounded again, like someone softly knocking on the wall. If I had lived in an apartment at the time, it would have been nothing, but this was the second story of the house. I sat in silent fear as my eyes passed over the room one more time. Nothing was there. Cold, damp sweat had started to form over my pale skin as I listened closer. This time it sounded closer to me. I could feel a dull ache in my body from keeping my muscles tensed for so long. I couldn't find it in me to move, though. It had sounded like it was inside the wall further down now. Unfortunately enough for me, that sound was followed by another. I could hear something move. The noise was similar to the sound of someone shuffling along the floor. However, it hadn't come from the room, but instead inside the wall. I know what you're thinking. I had thought the same thing too. It had to be something like the pipes, right? The relief that washed over me as that thought held me was comforting. I'd just been scaring myself. I had smiled to myself as I closed my eyes again. The fear had finally started to ebb some. I could feel that perfect comfort starting to pull me back into sleep. The sheets were so soft on my skin, and the room was perfectly cool. My mind was starting to fall away into that all too familiar darkness of sleep. Even the cool hand on my cheek felt so very nice.